All right, team, let's talk really quick about the process of alternation of generations in plants. Basically, what we're doing when we're talking about alternation of generations is we're talking about the life cycle of plants. And we give it a special name because they have some really kind of weird, funky ways of going through this process of their life cycle. Okay, so let's start out by defining a couple terms. First, we have the term gametophyte and the term sporophyte. So this suffix right here, phyte, that just means plant. So if you ever see that phyte on the end, or phyto, usually that just means plant. However, the prefix is different for each one, right? Gameto versus sporo. So what these terms are referencing is, well, obviously we're talking about plants. Gametophyte is the life cycle stage of plants that produces gametes. So it's a life cycle stage that produces gametes in plants, which is where the gameto comes from. And remember, gametes, those are those haploid sperm and egg cells, right? The reproductive cells. So the gametophyte stage in the plant's life cycle makes gametes. They're always named for what they produce. The sporophyte stage, though, that sporophyte stage, this is the stage that makes or produces these spores. Spores are also haploid, and they're not seeds. They are cells that will go through mitosis to create the gametophyte stage. Sporophyte makes spores, gametophyte makes gametes. Let's walk through an example of what this looks like in our non-vascular plants. So our non-vascular. So those are going to be things like our mosses, liverworts, things like that. But mosses are the most common member of this group. When you look at a moss, typically most of what you're seeing, this little green blob right here, this is our moss. Typically, most of what you see when you see a moss is the gametophyte stage. So the gametophyte stage is a haploid stage, meaning it is only one copy of each chromosome. So we use the term N. So each of the cells in this gametophyte have only one copy of each chromosome. They're all haploid. This gametophyte is going to go through mitosis to make sperm and eggs. So in order to make the gametes, the gametophyte goes through mitosis, which is weird because usually when we talk about making gametes, we talk about meiosis. But because these cells are already haploid, they already only have one copy of each chromosome, we can't divide that up again. Okay, so only diploid cells can go through meiosis. These gametes, these sperm and these eggs, they fuse together. Remember, these are still all haploid. So they fuse together to create the diploid sporophyte stage. So after the sperm and egg fuse, we get the sporophyte stage. And what that looks like in mosses is we have our moss. And then sometimes after these egg and sperm have fused, you'll see a weird little structure coming up off the top of the moss. Kind of looks like that a little bit. That is the sporophyte stage. So that is the diploid stage 2N. So the cells in this structure all have two copies of each chromosome. One that I got from the sperm, one that I got from the egg. This sporophyte in mosses, it grows up and out of the gametophyte. Remember, this down here is still our gametophyte. These cells in this special region of the sporophyte, those cells will go through meiosis to create haploid spores. So these sporophyte diploid cells, 2N, go through meiosis, and they create haploid spores. These haploid spores are the cells that will then go back through mitosis. So these haploid spores go through mitosis to create the haploid gametophyte stage again. So in plants, there's this weird part where there's this weird kind of odd life cycle where their diploid stage is almost separate from their haploid stage. And this is totally different from us and as animals, right? Our haploid cells, our sperm and egg cells, are made by specific organs in our body, and the rest of us is all diploid. In plants, they have distinct multicellular haploid stages and distinct multicellular diploid stages. So the sporophyte stage is diploid, and it makes spores that are haploid. Those haploid spores, this is just one single cell. Each one of these is one cell, basically. They divide by mitosis to create more haploid gametophyte structure. This haploid gametophyte structure goes through mitosis to create specialized gametes, sperm and egg. Those haploid gametes then fuse through the process of fertilization. And that's how we get the sporophyte structure, this structure right here in orange up top. That sporophyte structure goes through meiosis. Those diploid cells, remember you have to be diploid in order to go through meiosis. Then those diploid sporophyte cells go through meiosis to produce the spores. And everything starts over again. So we'll see variations of this theme with the other groups of plants. But typically when you're looking at a non-vascular plant, a moss, the majority of what you're seeing is this gametophyte stage. The moss spends most of its life cycle, most of its life in that haploid gametophyte stage.